So now that Article 50 has been triggered, what should happen to migration policy? Joining me are Stephen Woolfe, formerly UKIP's migration spokesman, now an independent member of the European Parliament who wrote the report, and Mike Gapes, Labour MP and spokesperson for the campaign group Open Britain. Welcome to you both. Mike Gapes, a lot of talk about the will of the people as expressed in the referendum. Is your view that the will of the people was for restrictions on immigration, reduction in numbers?
I think the will of the people was a complicated question. Lots of people voted for lots of different reasons to leave the European Union. What they didn't vote for was to crash the economy and make themselves poorer. And the problem with these proposals is they would have serious economic impact on our country, particular sectors like agriculture, food processing. The NHS would be very badly affected by this. It would be bureaucratic and unworkable, I guess.
But do you think politicians, and admittedly they're on both sides, but the view of the House of Parliament now is to accept the outcome of the referendum, that included a net reduction in immigration?
I don't think you can set targets, and in fact, interestingly, Theresa May has now gone away from targets. David Davis, speaking in Estonia a few weeks ago, didn't say there would be reductions in migration from Europe because of our economy and our other needs.
All right, Stephen Woolfe, what are you recommending?
Well, what I am recommending first and foremost is for a fair, flexible and forward-thinking immigration policy that takes Britain into the 21st century. And within that, what we've got to do is have a British working visa system. And what I'm advocating here is an Australian points-based system combined with that of what Migration Watch has suggested, which is work permits. So if you want to come and work into this country, it applies to everybody in the world, and you have to have points first, and then you have to have a job. And that job has to be backed by the kind of insurance for health. You have to have a minimum of £35,000 a year, and you won't get any benefits for the 5 years.
And let's be clear about this, you would stop all other sorts of immigration.
What we're saying is that we would open immigration and continue it for the highly skilled. And this is where I come in.
No, but I mean, for example, families of wives of people from the Indian subcontinent, that kind of thing.
No, what we were saying here is that if you're coming over as a student, if you're coming over as a temporary worker, you wouldn't be allowed to bring your families here. But if you are one of those who gets a permanent visa, then your families can come along as well. And that's what we have advocated.
I mean, it does have to be said, a minimum salary of 35,000, competent English, 5-year private and health scheme, and a satisfactory level of savings. I mean, that's a very high bar. That is a minority of people who be...
And that is why we're saying that this is for the highly skilled. And if I can come on to the point that Mike says about the agricultural workers and the health. If you read the report, you see very clearly that I set aside agricultural workers to have a special temporary work permit system, and in terms of the health system, we have an independent body that works with the health service to maintain the levels that we've got.
But you don't accept the fairly drastic cut, because I think we're talking about 300,000 or so people from inside and outside the EU at the moment coming to this country, that a fairly drastic cut like that, you don't accept that would damage the economy, whether or not it was socially desirable?
No, absolutely not. And there are a number of reasons why. This is actually would obviously filter downward slowly over a period of 2 to 3 years, which is where you see into the terms of the report. Secondly, we have 826,000 young people from 16 to 24 who are not working, and we should be putting our money into training them to fill the jobs.
I think there are two major problems with this. The Australian points-based system actually leads to a higher level of migration into Australia per capita than the levels in this country. Secondly...
You can have it with a cap, can't you?
You could, but the point is the economy that we have grows because it actually has workers. There will be major labour shortages. We're already 20,000 nurses short in the NHS. GPs are retiring in a certain cohort at the moment. There are major issues here. Now, we've obviously got to do more about training people in this country to do highly skilled jobs, but actually the agricultural sector, the food processing sector, retail in London, a lot of the hotels would be massively affected by loss of the ability to have people come here from other countries.
I mean, on the NHS, he's proposing a panel to review the requirements of the NHS. But I mean,
why set up a bureaucratic panel when it's not necessary?
No, but what about this basic problem that perhaps we have as a country, been lazy, relied on foreigners coming in to take jobs as a result that we've got employment amongst our own people, whatever unemployment and lack of skills. And shouldn't that be what a politician wants to concentrate on?
There are issues about lack of skills, technical education, about our attitude compared to Germany. But within the EU, Germany is doing very well with all of those things and isn't proposing to leave. You can do all those domestic issues about your education and training without crashing your economy and leaving the European Union.
Maybe you need a shock.
Well, it will be a shock. It may be a terrible shock, and maybe in a few years' time, people will say we're getting more level of immigration than we had before, or the same, because we need it for our economy. Why on earth did we ever vote to leave?
If I can come back to Mike's very valid points about the training aspect. First, there's a big difference between what I propose and the Australian points-based system. Yes, Australia allows lots of people to come in once they have the points. Here I am saying that the Migration Advisory Council fixes the points you can apply to this country for a work permit once you have the points, but only up to the numbers that the Migration Advisory Council. And when we come down to training, take this very considerable. You see the reports today. We have straight A students, 800 of them, not able to get university places this year to become doctors. That's a training issue. Over the last 3 years, we've had a reduction in training contracts for nurses from 20,000 to 17,000, and yet we only lose from the NHS, and this is where you have to go back, only lose 2,000 a year out of the NHS of those who are leaving to go abroad. If we put those places back, we would be 1,000 more nurses a year up by training our own, not relying on cheap labour from abroad.
If you are setting a 35,000 figure, you are actually impacting on a very large number of people who've come here to work, who are paying taxes, making a contribution to all kinds of industries and services in this country. There would be a serious gap. You can't fill that by unemployed people, because we actually have relatively low levels of unemployment overall in the economy. In sectors and in parts of the country where you've got labour shortages, there would be serious impact on those businesses.
But then it's up to us as a country, as a government, to be able to put our policies
in be a dislocation, wouldn't there? I mean, it would, even if you're in an ideal world, assuming that we could find the human talent and the resources to train them, there would be a severe economic dislocation.
But this is the moral responsibility of government and business to recognise that you can no longer go out into this globalised world and take cheap labour and ignore the people in this country by not putting in the resources, the cash, the capital, the training to ensure our own people can fill those jobs.
Yeah, but if other countries are taking advantage of cheap free labour or relatively cheap labour, then we're going to be at an economic disadvantage, aren't we?
We'll only be at an economic disadvantage if we don't train the people in our own country to be able to fill those jobs and have what I propose.
But that'd be more expensive, that's what I'm saying.
And what I have in terms of the moratorium of 5 years is to enable people to get this in place, and we still have the highly skilled, of which Mike has talked about, and that we need in this country.
One place where you are out of step with the government is you don't want restrictions on students coming here.
No, I mean, I believe that students actually contribute very well to our economy, and you see a number of cities and towns across the country that rely on that, and it's important for us to be able to take people from the universities who do well into our own economy. But one reason why...
It's not going to help people get places at medical school, though, is it?
But that is up to us, as I said, with the 800 students that we've got, for us to put more money into the system.
You say no further restrictions here.
No, I'm not taking any restrictions on the students, because actually they're not the ones who have the major impact on net migration. It's the 294,000 people who come here for work when we have net migration of 276,000. That is why I'm saying you must look at the work component of this, not asylum seekers, not family reunion, not students, because over a period of time family reunion will go down naturally if we reduce the number of workers coming here.
The students should be taken out of the immigration statistics.
Agreement on that.
And there has been a long call for that. I would, because frankly, they are not coming here permanently. They are here to study. But we also should actually be more imaginative. Our universities are now facing a real problem. Countries like India, the brightest students are not coming here anymore. They're going to the US because they can work after they've studied for a couple of years. Would you let them work
for a limited period?
And again, if you look at the report that we see, we have the students concept where we have, as we do now, those who get extra degrees, those who get MAs, those who go on from PhDs would have the ability to get extra visas coming
Just
through.
finally, what about the cost of this, both in terms of administering a system and also in terms of civil liberties, of knowing who's who in the country?
Well, I think in terms of knowing who's who requires us actually to put a very strong implementation system on our borders, and it means that we have to combine passports with national insurance and the visa system, something consecutive governments tried to do and have failed, and I think technology enables to do that. And that wouldn't actually be a massive cost. I mean, I remember looking at it in terms of less than 100 million for the system when I looked at it in 2014. So I think that is something that we should put in place now, and then over the period of time we would actually have a very workable system for the 21st century.
Now, your report's being praised by senior Tories. Are you on the way to joining the Tory party?
There is a big battle in the European Union that requires people from the Labour Party and the Tory and the Lib Dems who are fighting Brexit. I'm going to remain as an independent to do exactly the job that enables me to write reports like this free of those restrictions.
You didn't frankly have the balls to put country before party.